Welcome back to Threads of Truth, where real-life mysteries meet internet speculation.
And today, we are walking through a case that it just perfectly encapsulates the modern mystery of this deliberate orchestration of a vanishing, where the digital trail was meticulously erased, yet the physical evidence was left right out in the open, almost, beckoning us to solve it.
We are talking about the perplexing disappearance of Ray Gricar. On April 15th, 2005, a seasoned, respected district attorney in Center County, Pennsylvania, leaves for what he told his girlfriend was just a casual, scenic drive
Toward the Susquehanna Valley.
Right, and he simply vanishes. When his car was found the next day, it told a pretty clear story of abandonment, but critically, it showed absolutely no sign of a struggle. The scene was neat, professional, and just.
Yeah.
Utterly ambiguous.
That contrast, I think that's what sets the stage here. The contrast between the high professional control Gricar commanded in his life and the profound chaos of his exit. A man in his position doesn't just spontaneously disappear.
No.
His routine was disrupted with a seemingly ordinary act, but the outcome was extraordinary and highly calculated. The ambiguity really rests on two key pillars of evidence. First, that iconic red Mini Cooper abandoned near the Susquehanna River.
Which immediately suggests either intentional staging or suicide.
Exactly. And second, the bizarre discovery, months later, a laptop deliberately and, aggressively destroyed, found just sitting in the river itself.
It's just so precise. This wasn't a crime of passion or a sudden change of plans. This feels like a professional vanishing act, executed with this unnerving precision. You have no signs of a struggle, no ransom demands, no credible confirmed sightings after he left home.
Nothing.
So our mission today is to really examine the various pathways this puzzle presents. Was this a planned voluntary disappearance, maybe driven by professional burnout or a profound personal crisis, echoing a dark family tragedy?
Or was it targeted retaliation? Something linked to his 2 decades of high-stakes, sometimes controversial prosecutorial work.
Or, and this is the darker thought, was it something else entirely? A planned exit that somehow failed, leaving behind only the meticulously destroyed blueprints of his final intentions. Let's begin by unpacking who Ray Gricar was, because his identity as the district attorney, it's not just background information, is it? It feels absolutely central to the mystery of how he disappeared.
It's the defining context. You can't understand the case without it. Ray Gricar was 59 years old when he went missing. He wasn't a novice. He was the elected district attorney of Center County, Pennsylvania, a post he'd held for 2 decades.
And for anyone who doesn't know, Center County is home to Penn State University.
Right, which gives the DA's role a much higher profile.
Yeah.
You're dealing with things that get national attention, well beyond typical rural county politics.
And from what the sources say, his professional reputation was, it was largely sterling. He was known for being independent, professional, and maintaining this notoriously calm and private demeanor.
Yeah, people who worked with him called him steady, even-keeled. But this context is absolutely key. Gricar was actively considering retirement. Served long enough. And it's possible the sheer duration, the political stress of the job, it might have been wearing on him. Opening the door to the possibility that professional fatigue played a role in whatever crisis led to his final act.
So if we look at his immediate personal status, his financial preparations, or I guess the lack thereof, the picture gets really complicated for that starting a new life theory.
It really does. Investigators found no major withdrawals from his accounts, no large cash transactions, nothing like that. No known travel arrangements like purchased plane tickets or hotel reservations.
So if he was planning a permanent, comfortable exit to start a new identity somewhere,
he lacked the most essential preparation. The financial trail just isn't there, and this suggests 2 possibilities. Either he planned for a very short exit, like a suicide, or
he orchestrated a departure intending to survive completely off the grid, relying on his wits without any access to traceable assets, just a total destruction of his past identity.
It's a paradox, though. The idea of being so intensely private, yet orchestrating a vanishing act that will immediately become a media spectacle. It's fascinating.
It really is.
Well, it speaks to the ultimate loss of control he must have felt. As a DA, he controlled every narrative in the courtroom. So maybe to orchestrate an exit that controlled his personal narrative, even if it meant sacrificing his life, would have been psychologically consistent with a high-control personality who's facing burnout or maybe even scandal.
Let's walk through the exact timeline of that day. Friday, April 15th, 2005.
The day was just utterly normal, which is what's so terrifying in hindsight. He left his home in Center Hall around 11:30 in the morning.
And he told his long-term girlfriend, Patty Fornicla, who was also his neighbor, that he was simply going for a scenic drive.
That's right. His stated route was Route 192, heading toward Lewisburg, a town about 45 miles away. And this is important because the drive itself is often scenic. It winds through forests, along creeks. It's a standard relaxation route.
But he never came home. Patty reported him missing when he didn't return that evening, and the search began. Then the next morning, April 16th, they find the red Mini Cooper.
And the location of that discovery is the first crucial clue. It instantly redirects the entire narrative toward the water.
Yeah.
The car was found abandoned in the parking lot of an antique store in Lewisburg.
Yeah.
The store itself isn't significant, but its proximity to the Susquehanna River is. It was parked right near two major bridges that cross the river.
And the Susquehanna isn't some small creek. It's massive. It's fast-moving. It can be notoriously deep.
So finding the car there instantly pointed investigators toward the most tragic and, I guess, the most obvious conclusion.
Let's talk about the oddities inside the Mini Cooper, because this is where the staging starts to feel unnervingly intentional. Almost like a piece of theater.
It's the ultimate mixed message. I mean, there were no signs of physical struggle. No broken glass, no blood, no torn upholstery. It suggests he left the vehicle willingly or that whoever took him was incredibly efficient.
But the inventory inside the car is what's so weird.
Look at what was left behind. His wallet, containing cash and ID, and his work cell phone were inside the car.
Which makes no sense. If he was robbed, the wallet would be gone. If he was fleeing to start a new life, he'd take the cash.
But the keys were missing. That's the detail that stops the simple robbery theory dead in its tracks.
It really does.
To leave your ID and your phone behind,
Yeah.
yet to take the keys. It just hints at orchestration. He wasn't robbed, he wasn't checking into a hotel, and he definitely wasn't planning on driving that car back home. The scene was set for an immediate and permanent exit.
And then there's the truly suspicious detail that law enforcement flagged right away. The cigarette ashes.
The cigarette ashes in the car, yeah. Gricar was known to intensely dislike cigarette smoke.
So what does that mean?
Well, that detail is a crucial wild card. If those ashes were fresh, from around the time of the disappearance, they strongly suggest one of two scenarios.
Okay.
Either Gricar had a highly stressful meeting with someone in that car right before he vanished, a meeting potentially related to whatever secrets he was trying to protect, or someone else was involved in staging the scene.
Someone else drove the car to Lewisburg and left a small piece of themselves, a bit of evidence, behind.
Exactly. It immediately complicates the solo, voluntary disappearance or suicide theory. It raises the specter of foul play. The careful staging of the car. That was really only the setup. The digital trail, which didn't even surface until 3 months later, that's the main course in this mystery. It gives us our deepest insight into the premeditation.
Let's talk about the discovery of the laptop, which must have given investigators this massive, even if it was fleeting, rush of hope.
Oh, absolutely. It was a shocking twist that just solidified the case's complexity. In July of 2005, a couple of fishermen found a laptop in the Susquehanna River.
Right in the river.
Yeah, it was lodged right up against a bridge support, hundreds of yards downstream from where the Mini Cooper had been abandoned. Law enforcement confirmed it was Gricar's work laptop.
But this laptop wasn't a source of information. It was actually evidence of its own meticulous destruction.
Exactly. The critical forensic finding was that the hard drive was missing from the laptop chassis when they pulled the main body out of the water.
The brain was gone.
The brain, the repository of all his documents, his emails, his secrets, it was gone. And then it was later found separately on the riverbank. And here's the truly sinister detail. It had been physically destroyed. It was battered and so water damaged that any information, even fragmented data, was completely unrecoverable.
We need to spend a moment on the forensic consequence here. When we talk about water damage, we aren't just talking about a damp phone. Why is data recovery from a physically battered, submerged hard drive virtually impossible?
Well, especially with the older mechanical drives, common in 2005, they are incredibly sensitive to both shock and water. If you expose the magnetic platter inside to water and mud, The data is corrupted almost instantly.
But this wasn't just environmental damage.
Not at all. The sources suggest the platter itself was damaged, possibly smashed, which means someone didn't just toss it in the river and hope for the best. They ensured, through physical force and then immersion, that the data was permanently inaccessible.
The intent wasn't just to hide the hard drive.
The intent was to ensure its contents were annihilated.
Wow. And this leads us to the most damning evidence of premeditation, which was discovered on Gricar's home computer, the one that wasn't destroyed.
Right.
Investigators found records of internet searches conducted just before he disappeared. What were those specific searches?
The searches were just chillingly specific. They moved the case firmly into the realm of planning. They found searches for how to wreck a hard drive, how to fry a hard drive, and water damage to a notebook computer.
Let's pause and consider the technical implications of those phrases. Why fry a hard drive? That suggests an electrical overload, not just, smashing it with a hammer. It points towards someone seeking specific, effective techniques.
It does. It moves beyond casual knowledge. Someone was researching highly effective, potentially permanent methods of data destruction. If Gricar conducted these searches, it proves that his departure was not spontaneous.
No way.
He spent time planning how to obliterate the digital history of his life, which suggests he was either protecting secrets, orchestrating a perfect vanishing, or setting up the appearance of a planned suicide to cover a crime. This digital footprint is the strongest piece of evidence we have for premeditation in the entire case.
But here's the challenge, right? If Gricar did the searches, he planned his own demise. If someone else did the searches on his computer, they were staging the scene to perfectly mimic a planned voluntary disappearance.
And framing him in the process.
Exactly. Either way, the destruction of that data was central to the motive.
Precisely. The calculated nature of the destruction overwrites everything else. Whether it was Gricar or an adversary, the goal was the same. Silence whatever was on that hard drive forever. And by achieving that, they ensured the investigation would always be stuck in ambiguity, perpetually searching for a motive that was erased on a riverbank.
To truly appreciate the weight of that premeditation, we have to understand the pressures Gricar was facing, specifically this strange family precedent and the intense professional risks that come with being a long-serving district attorney.
Let's start with the family history. It provides this profound, unsettling psychological parallel that investigators just could not ignore.
Okay.
Ray Gricar's older brother, Roy Gricar, disappeared in 1996, nearly a decade before Ray did. Roy was later found deceased in the Great Miami River in Ohio. His death was officially ruled a suicide.
So you have two brothers, separated by almost a decade, both disappearing under mysterious circumstances, and both linked directly to a river environment. That connection alone is just powerful fuel for the suicide theory. Does it suggest some kind of hereditary pattern in how they handled crisis? Or was the location chosen deliberately to mimic his brother's fate?
Well, it creates a compelling narrative of recurrence, doesn't it? When the Mini Cooper is found near the Susquehanna, that previous family tragedy instantly becomes the lens through which investigators view Ray Gricar's disappearance.
It has to.
It suggests this tragic, deep-seated pattern of response to crisis, choosing the water as the final resting place. However, as you said, it also introduces the possibility that if Gricar was planning a staged vanishing, he might have intentionally mirrored his brother's exit to throw the investigation onto the most emotionally compelling, yet possibly false, path.
The perfect red herring.
The perfect red herring.
Okay, let's move to the professional hazards. Gricar was DA for 20 years. He prosecuted everything from capital crimes to complex political corruption cases. That level of exposure is bound to put a target on your back.
Absolutely. When a DA vanishes without a trace, the primary question immediately shifts to potential retaliation. What did he put away? Who did he offend? What powerful interests did he threaten? He handled thousands of cases that could provide a motive for revenge.
And here is where we have to address the most scrutinized prosecutorial decision mentioned in the sources, the one that generated the most public speculation after he disappeared.
And we must report this impartially, just focusing on the factual sequence. The sources all mention Gricar's 1998 decision, so 7 years before his disappearance, to decline to file charges against then Penn State assistant football coach Jerry Sandusky following initial allegations of child sexual abuse.
A critical decision that placed Gricar at the center of immense controversy years later.
It did. And it's vital to state the context. Gricar declined the charges in 1998. Sandusky was later charged and convicted of multiple counts of abuse 13 years after Gricar's disappearance.
Right. And police stated clearly they found no credible link between Gricar's disappearance and that specific decision. But the fact that he was the DA who made that call means that in the absence of any other motive, public speculation immediately drew a straight line between the two events.
It's the nature of high-profile cold cases. People demand a high-stakes motive for a high-stakes figure. A retiring DA facing a personal crisis feels almost mundane compared to the idea of a powerful, silenced figure. The public insists on a conspiracy.
But investigators did look into it.
Oh, they conducted thorough due diligence. They examined Gricar's case files looking for threats related to this and other organized crime or drug-related cases. They just didn't find confirmed evidence supporting this link. They couldn't rule it out entirely either.
And there's also the brief but important mention that investigators considered linking Gricar's case to the 2003 unsolved death of Assistant U.S. Attorney Jonathan Luna,
Who was found dead in a creek in rural Pennsylvania.
Yes. Another legal professional, mysterious circumstances, near water, same general region.
Right. That consideration shows the institutional anxiety at the time. Luna's case suggested a potential pattern of violence targeting high-ranking legal officials. Although no formal confirmed link was ever established between the Gricar and Luna cases, the very idea shows that law enforcement were considering a larger organized plot, not just a simple personal crisis.
It underlines the professional dangers he navigated every day.
It really does.
So, just to summarize before we get into the theories, no financial drain, he's considering retirement, he's intensely private, he has a long-term girlfriend, Patty Fornicola, who is adamant he would never intentionally abandon her, and an estranged relationship with his daughter, Laura. It's this mosaic of personal pressure and professional complexity that makes his final choice even more opaque.
It truly does. He had enough stability to suggest he should have been fine, yet he clearly carried profound internal secrets he was willing to, it seems, obliterate himself to protect.
So now we shift focus from the nuts and bolts evidence to the interpretive landscape. How the internet, how the public attempts to fill the void left by that destroyed hard drive. When you destroy the secrets, you create infinite possibilities for speculation.
And this case is a perfect example of a mystery fueled entirely by the absence of information. The most detailed clues we have, the hard drive searches, they lead to two diametrically opposed yet equally calculated theories: voluntary exit or staged suicide.
Let's break down the voluntary exit theories, maybe splitting them into suicide versus starting a new identity.
Okay. The voluntary disappearance theory. It has strong internal support from those digital clues. The research on hard drive destruction suggests a calculated, intentional exit, probably driven by professional pressure, an imminent scandal, or some personal crisis he just couldn't face publicly.
He just wanted to dissolve his former identity.
He chose control over closure.
But the new identity aspect is tough for me to swallow, just given the complete lack of financial preparation. Where would he go? How would a prominent DA survive long-term without tapping any known assets?
That's the critical weakness of the new life theory. A successful voluntary disappearance requires financial preparedness. Gricar showed none of it. That fact really tilts the balance more toward a planned ending of his life, rather than a planned continuation of it under new terms.
Which brings us squarely to the suicide theory.
Exactly. And that theory is supported powerfully by three elements: the river location, the staged abandonment of the car to suggest he walked to the river, and of course, the profound precedent set by his brother Roy's river-related suicide in 1996.
It fits a tragic, if convenient, pattern.
Yet the counter-arguments are significant. The main obstacle is the lack of a body. The Susquehanna is vast, but bodies typically surface, especially in cases where the individual didn't weight themselves down.
And there's the testimony of his girlfriend and family.
Right, their powerful testimony. They rejected the idea that Gricar was suffering from depression or would ever intentionally abandon them without a note. They argue if he intended to end his life, he would have done so in a way that provided closure, especially given his professional sense of duty.
I have to push back on that convenience factor, though. Doesn't the existence of a prior river suicide in the family risk leading investigators down a clear path, making them potentially less skeptical of the scene?
That's an excellent point. It creates confirmation bias. When they find the car near the river, the police likely immediately jump to the family history, and in doing so, they might minimize the strange details, like the missing keys or the cigarette ashes.
So it allows for the possibility that Gricar, or a perpetrator,
Deliberately use the family tragedy as a red herring to mask either foul play or a true vanishing. The family history is the perfect staging tool for ambiguity.
Let's move on to the darker theories then. Foul play and professional retaliation.
This is where the online community really focuses its energy. They explore the retaliation or targeted violence theory. As a DA dealing with capital crimes, organized crime, controversial political cases, Gricar was a constant potential target.
And online forums persist in connecting his disappearance directly to high-profile cases he handled.
Suggesting revenge from a previously incarcerated individual or a person seeking to silence him over some unrevealed information.
But again, law enforcement has reiterated they found no credible confirmed threats against him prior to the vanishing. This lack of concrete evidence is why the theory often slides toward organized criminal involvement.
The idea that it wasn't a disgruntled convict, but a highly coordinated professional hit designed to look like a personal exit.
Right.
Exactly. The sophistication required to stage the scene, parking the car neatly, destroying the hard drive meticulously. It suggests a level of planning that is often associated with organized actors, not a spur-of-the-moment attack. If foul play occurred, it was planned to perfection to appear as something else, capitalizing on the victim's existing personal vulnerabilities.
Like his brother's suicide. Let's return to the digital clues theory in those search terms. We know he searched how to wreck a hard drive. Was Gricar trying to hide something specific on that drive? Maybe evidence of his own wrongdoing or a personal secret.
Or is there a theory that the searches belong to someone else?
Someone who staged the scene to implicate Gricar in his own disappearance.
Both are valid hypotheses. If Gricar did the searching, he was destroying evidence related to something catastrophic, whether a secret life, professional misconduct that could lead to disbarment, or financial malfeasance. The destruction was a protective act, shielding his reputation even in death.
And if someone else did the searches?
Then they were creating an undeniable digital timeline, proving premeditation. Imagine the perpetrator realizing they need to explain why the crucial laptop evidence is useless. The answer is simple. Plant searches on the other computer to create the narrative that Gricar himself planned the destruction.
It's classic misdirection.
It is. Using the victim's own digital signature to build the narrative of suicide. The meticulous nature of the destruction, hard drive removed, laptop found separately, it just demands a conclusion of calculation, whether by Gricar or a skilled assailant.
And finally, the cultural aspect of this, the river symbolism. The fact that both Gricar and his brother Roy disappeared in river-related circumstances is what gives the case this tragic, almost literary quality.
The river adds texture and a layer of fatalism. Water has always symbolized purification, transition, the washing away of fins. The fact that the Susquehanna is such a powerful, dominating feature of the local geography makes it a mythical ultimate destination.
So culturally, Gricar's case is seen as the vanishing of the digital age.
I think so. A high-powered individual whose ultimate secret was encrypted not by a password, but by a hammer and a river. It embodies the modern fear that even the most established professionals can simply choose to disappear, taking their secrets to the grave or perhaps to the riverbed.
Okay, let's try to synthesize all of this and really unpack what the evidence suggests. We have a vanishing act that was undeniably planned. We see that in the digital research, yet it's physically incomplete. There's no body, no struggle, just a car and pieces of a computer. How do investigators resolve this intentional ambiguity?
The key factor is always premeditation. The evidence, especially the research into hard drive destruction, it points overwhelmingly toward a planned exit. This level of planning strongly suggests Gricar was either planning his suicide or planning the first step in a voluntary disappearance.
But the lack of remains and the missing keys just make confirmation impossible.
For either suicide or foul play, right? The evidence was crafted to be intentionally ambiguous. It allows for the conclusion that's most palatable to the investigator, the suicide theory backed by family history, while leaving the door ajar for all these alternative narratives.
I think we have to return to Gricar's psychological profile. The stress, the independence, the intense privacy. How might an individual like that, a high-achieving public servant, handle profound burnout, or a sudden crisis that threatened to expose his deepest secrets?
Well, a high-control personality handles a crisis by imposing ultimate control over the outcome. For a man who defined himself by his professional composure and his privacy, the thought of his secrets being aired publicly, whether it's professional misconduct or a personal scandal, that would be intolerable.
So orchestrating a disappearance is the ultimate way to dictate the terms of his ending.
It is. And it ensures that whatever was on that hard drive would never see the light of day. The destruction of the digital record is perhaps the final act of a deeply private person protecting his reputation at all costs.
So the concept of the calculated exit remains the most plausible, even if we can't define the type of exit.
Exactly. It aligns perfectly with the known facts. The discovery of the abandoned car near the river, the unprecedented specific destruction of the hard drive, and the precedent of his brother's history. All these elements create a perfect profile for a staged suicide or a meticulously planned effort to disappear and start anew.
Which makes voluntary disappearance highly plausible in theory.
Yet perpetually unproven, because we lack the physical confirmation, the body, or the financial signature of a new life.
And that ambiguity is precisely why this case endures. Ray Gricar was declared legally dead on July 25, 2011, 7 years after he disappeared. But the investigation remains officially open, sustained entirely by online communities and dedicated sleuths who are still fascinated by the sparse, highly ambiguous evidence and the abundance of psychological complexity this man's life presented.
The evidence suggests that Gricar, or someone acting on his behalf, wanted to guarantee a mystery. The car gives us a location, the hard drive gives us a mindset, but neither gives us a body or a definitive motive. The lack of closure is the final agonizing legacy of this calculated exit. You know, the key to the Gricar case is not what we found, a car, a shattered computer, but what was so aggressively erased. What secrets could have been so vital that they were worth destroying an entire life's digital record, and potentially the life itself, to protect? That is the question that keeps this cold case eternally compelling. It forces us to ask, what price would you pay for absolute privacy?
It is a sobering thought, and one that really resonates in our digitally tracked age. Thank you for joining our examination of this baffling mystery, where the most important clues were destroyed before the investigation even began.
My pleasure.
Next week on Threads of Truth, we look at the baffling 2001 disappearance of Branson Perry, the Missouri man who walked into a family shed and vanished almost instantly. We'll see you then.